this schedule really shapes up for a playoff run with a 12-team playoff.
Areas that, you need to get from experience, which is just, hey, I need to make quicker decisions.
How do you define success for this team?
National championship.
What's going on, y'all? I'm Bud Elliott, and this is Cover 3 College Football Podcast. It's my summer school series where we try to rip through as many D1 teams as we possibly can. I don't know, maybe we'll get like 70 today. It's Texas A&M. I'm going to Gig'em 247. I'm going to my man, Karels. Carter, what's going on, dude?
Hey, nothing much. Thanks for having me, bud.
Absolutely, dude. Really enjoyed last year's show. You were on it, and let's do it again this year. So Mike Elko era, a return to competency in College Station. I guess we were trying to figure out how to term it. Actually, we're recording this on Wednesday, May 7th. We actually talked about the first year head coaches today on Cover 3, so it's sort of fresh and top of mind. What's the vibe coming out of College Station entering year 2?
Well, I think that when you look back at the first season under Mike Elko, it was kind of a up and down year, right? You start off 7-1, you finish 8-5, you lose to your last 4 Power 5 games. You felt like it was a good year in the sense that, like, there were some good signs, a lot of stabilizing of the program, but you also felt like maybe it was a missed opportunity. The defense really struggled down the stretch. Connor Wigman didn't end up being the answer at quarterback, ended up transferring. And the offense was a little bit up and down. And so I think going into year 2, the thought is, okay, you stabilize the program, you brought some normalcy, but can you take that next step? Can you be beyond an 8-5 kind of team that's kind of been the ceiling for them over the last few years? It hasn't been better than that. And so can they get better than that? I think that's kind of the question.
So Colin Klein enters year 2 as the offensive coordinator. Marcell Reed cemented as the quarterback. How does this offense change in 2025 and why?
Yeah, I think for Marcell, obviously, it's going to be his first time as the cemented guy. Last year was kind of a, who is it? Is it Connor? Is it Marcell? It's Marcell this year. And I think the foundation of this offense will be the offensive line and the running game and what Marcell Reed can do with his legs. And I think trying to set that up with the pass, right? So you're going to have one of the most experienced offensive lines in the country. You could make a case that A&M could have one of the best offensive lines in the country. And they're 7 deep. They've got 7 guys that bring experience and can, be capable guys. And you've got star power. You've got Trey Zune, who's an all-conference guy. You've got Marcell Reed Adams, who, could be a high draft pick next year. Chase Pasanis, another guy who could be a high draft pick. And so then you look at running back Le'Veon Moss, right? So I think this offense is going to be powered through those guys. And for Marcell Reed, I don't think he's going to be asked to be a superstar, but I think developing and growing as a passer is kind of the focus. He was okay last year as a passer. He didn't lose you games. He didn't make a lot of just glaring mistakes. Wasn't turnover prone like you've seen with some past A&M quarterbacks. But he also didn't maybe take you to that next level. And so kind of that balance, but I think it will be, through the run and through this offensive line.
If we're playing college fantasy, who are we drafted at running back and kind of what share of the carries we're expecting?
Well, I don't know if you draft one of these running backs just because I think it is a deep room. I think Le'Veon Moss certainly cemented himself as one of the best running backs in college football last year. At least the SEC, was a second-team All-SEC guy, even after missing the last 4 games, getting hurt. But you've got Reuben Owens, a former 5-star recruit. You've got Amari Daniels. This will be his 4th or 5th year in college football. E.J. Smith has been around the block. All guys that have gotten a lot of carries. I think, Le'Veon Moss is still that top guy. And then after that, Amari Daniels and Reuben Owens probably kind of splitting that backup role. Maybe it's a who's hot kind of thing. But under Colin Klein, traditionally and last year, he's someone that doesn't give one guy a ton of carries. Le'Veon Moss was by far the best guy last year, and you rarely saw him get over 20 touches in a game. And so they're going to divvy it up. And I think that can be a strength behind this offensive line, having a lot of fresh bodies back there.
Receiver-wise, they do lose their leading receiver to Georgia, but they also bring in some guys. What's your breakdown of this receiver room?
Yeah, some might argue that it's a better room this year. It's been a real struggle for this program the last few years. Haven't had a guy get over 800 yards, I think, since 2018. It's been a long time for this program. Maybe it was 2020, but I think that the thing was this year they brought in Casey Concepcion from NC State. He's a bona fide guy. He's a stud. He's going to be your best receiver in this group. Not the biggest receiver, but he's going to make a lot of catches, be a guy that can move the chains for you. Mario Craver, the guy they brought in from Mississippi State, he's all about speed. He's only like 160 pounds. He might be half my size, but he can blow past guys and really burn. And Preston, his first year at Mississippi State, they have other receivers that are younger, not quite proven, that certainly showed flashes in practice and in this spring. Isaiah Williams being one of them, Ashton Bethel-Roman being another. I think this is a room where maybe collectively you feel better about going into this season compared to where you were last year. But this question still remains, like, will they have that guy that they can just throw the ball up to and make a catch in the red zone in those 50-50 situations? Noah Thomas was that guy. They don't really have a guy like that now. Casey Concepcion, not quite that guy. Obviously, Mario Craver is more of that speed guy. So can they have a guy, and maybe it's a tight end who steps up for them and does that this year, but that's kind of the big question, that they don't have that outside guy that can just come down with 50-50 balls.
I mean, that was definitely going to be my next question there for sure. So let's hit a break here. We do see improvement on this offense, most likely, I think, just to kind of wrap this up. Same quarterback, same OC, really nice O-line, good run game, and probably a lot of play action. Do you think Reed, like, given his mobility, can sort of offset the lack of a kind of jump ball guy in the red zone?
Yeah, I think so. I think, not every offense has to look the same. What it looked like last year doesn't have to look like what it is this year. And I think you could argue, hey, if you've got a top 5 rushing offense in the country, you don't need to throw for 300 yards, 400 yards. You don't need to be throwing up 50 ball after 50 ball. You just need to make enough plays to move the chains. And I think for Reed, that deep ball is probably the next level for him. There are a lot of times last year you could look at where he overthrew wide open guys, or maybe he didn't process the read in time and anticipate a guy. There's definitely that next step he can take as far as deep ball accuracy and anticipation goes, and maybe just overall accuracy. And 61% was his completion percentage last year. He says he wants to be 70% this year, which is kind of a lofty goal, but if you can get that to like the 65% range, 66, you're looking at a pretty efficient offense, because he doesn't turn the ball over that much. So if you're a top 10, top 5 rushing offense, you really don't, and you're not turning the ball over and you're completing your passes, you don't really have to be making crazy play after crazy play through the air.
All right, now let's hit that break. When we come back, we'll talk a little Texas A&M defense.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
All right, guys, welcome back into the Cover 3 College Football Podcast. I'm here with Carter Karels, and he is talking Texas A&M for Gig 'em 247. We're going to talk a little defense now. Mike Elko leads this defense, obviously. Lyle Hempel back on staff. How much is that going to matter? How much is he going to influence the defensive scheme? Can we possibly know?
Yeah. They're not revealing much, but I think what there is to know is that Mike Elko will be more involved. It's going to be kind of that collaborative approach between him, Hemphill, and the defensive coordinator, Jay Bateman. And like I would implore everyone to rewatch that post-game USC press conference, because Mike Elko, I don't know if I've ever seen him that mad, where I mean, he was saying they don't know how to play zone coverage. They don't know what they're doing back there. I'm thinking, hey man, you're coaching these guys, and you're calling the defense. If they don't know how to play it, why are you calling that? But I think after he said that, you can't say that and then not make significant changes. And I think there are some people in Aggie land who thought, well, maybe that means firing Jay Bateman after 1 year, but he didn't go that route. He gave him some, a vow of confidence. And instead, I think the plan is more, hey, we're going to bring in this other guy, and it's going to be a little bit more involvement, where I think, it makes sense, because Mike Elko, was he known for defense, secondary? That's been kind of his thing, and a CEO role for him may not be playing to his strengths as much as him, having more hands on with the defense. So that's the game plan there.
So this defense does lose. I mean, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, one other guy for sure off the top of my head. I can't recall the name. I mean, that's a lot of firepower to lose up front. But I guess, maybe the counter would be like, they were good but not great in terms of consistency last year with those guys. Is there any argument to be made that maybe like more cohesiveness is going to avoid a major drop-off there?
Yeah, like you look at the drop-off A&M had last year, and a lot of it was because of those guys. Like Shamar Turner was playing with an injury in his leg, and was kind of, kind of holding A&M back, penalty after penalty, and just not playing well, not holding up well against the run. Nick Scorton really fell off a cliff. Shamar Stewart, 1.5 sacks on the year. So, I think if you were to, eye test this, no, the group that they have in this year is not as talented as that group. 3 guys that top 100 picks, no, they're not as talented as those guys. But the sack production, the consistency probably could be better. And I know you can't take much from spring games, and definitely not A&M's, because they were playing like walk-ons all across the offensive line. Most of their offensive line didn't play, but that defensive line really feasted in that spring game. And I think they feel better just coming into the summer about that group. You brought in a lot of new bodies there. TJ Searcy out of Florida is one of them. Tyler Onyeta, Iowa State. Dayon Hayes from Colorado, and Salmon Pemba from Georgia. And don't sleep on the true freshman Marco Jones. Again, can't take much from a spring game, but he had 5 sacks in that game, which is I call it the greatest A&M spring game ever. I wasn't there 30 years ago, but I just can't imagine 5 sacks has ever been done in a spring game. But anyway, I think, again, talent-wise, maybe not as good, definitely not as good, but production-wise, maybe it looks a little bit different.
Any chance the back 7 makes up for the losses of the front 4?
Yeah, I think that is a case to be made. You got 2 linebackers I think you feel pretty good about. Torian York will be his 3rd year as a starter, 2nd year as a captain. Scooby Williams kind of came out of nowhere last year. If you talk to anybody at Florida, they're like, yeah, don't be counting on that guy. He's not going to be very good. He was pretty good last year. Then you got Will Lee at cornerback, and 2nd team All-SEC last year. I could see him being on some preseason All-American lists. He's that good of a cornerback. And then at safety, probably one of your weaker spots, but I think there are some reasons for optimism there with the group returning all 3 of their top guys. Bryce Anderson being healthier. He played all last season with a pretty significant shoulder injury. So they returned a lot of their guys on defense, just not on the defensive line. So I think having that continuity on the back end and maybe getting a little bit more production from the D-line can make it a little bit more of a cohesive unit.
Makes sense. Big picture question here for the Aggies. Who's a guy that if he reaches his ceiling like maybe a year ahead of schedule, or just a guy who finally plays up to his potential, that it drastically changes the season? And we can't say quarterback because that's basically just cheating. It's kind of the cheat code position. So non-quarterback, if he really hits, this season is different.
Man, I got to go with a guy on defense because I think there's coming off of last season, that's where the questions were mostly on. And offense, I think you've got a high enough floor there. There's a lot of guys you could pick. I'll probably go with Cassius Howell. I should have mentioned him earlier when I was talking about the defensive line, but he is somebody that if you watched him last year, you might have been saying, shoot, this guy might be better than Shamar Stewart and Nick Scorton. He's more productive. He's making more plays. Now, the flip side is he gets a lot of penalties. You can run right at him. You can run a lot of yards running it at him. But if he cleans up the penalties and one more year of experience, he came from Bowling Green the previous year, this is a guy that could be a high draft pick when it's all said and done. He could be a guy that has 10 sacks next year, right? Like, it would not shock me if he was one of those guys. And you get a kind of 8-10 sack season out of him, and it really raises the floor of this defense. They need a guy that can do that on the defensive line. They needed a guy to do that last year. It didn't happen. It happened the first half of the season. Nick Scorton did it, and then he fell off a cliff. And so can they get a guy that throughout the whole season can be the top dude? And he had 4.5 sacks last year as a backup, as a featured guy this year. Again, I just think he's somebody that may not be on everybody's radar now, but by the end of the season, he will be.
So big early road trip to South Bend, obviously tough SEC road slate, trips to LSU, trips to Texas, which is now a conference game, trips to Arkansas and Missouri. Well, Arkansas is still in Jerry World, or is that no longer the case?
No longer the case.
Got it. Okay. And then obviously at Missouri, how do you define success for this A&M team here in 25?
It's a good question. It's a different year than last year. Last year, the schedule set up so well. You had so much talent on that defensive line. Connor Wigman had so much hype. You really felt like this team could win 10 games, right? This year, it's a little bit different. You're kind of recalibrating. You still got some experience in some spots, but the schedule's a little bit tougher. And so I think for this team, the thought of success still has to be 9 wins, just because it's something that this team rarely ever does. They're 8-5 or worse almost every year over the last 20-25 years, almost 30 years. And so you have to be realistic at some point. And yeah, they've brought in some really good recruiting classes, but at a certain point, you can't just see 5-7, 7-6, 8-5 and say, oh, well, this team can win 10 and 11 games. They got to start with 9 games first before they can get to that next level. And look, I think in the SEC, you win 9 or 10 games, that's enough to get you into the playoff. And so 9 kind of puts you on that edge. I don't know if that'll get you in, but for me, it's just with A&M, it's something they rarely do. And so to get 9 wins, I think would be a really nice step forward for Mike Elko.
Carter, really enjoyed this. We'll be following all your coverage this year on Gig 'em 247, and appreciate the time.
Awesome. Thanks, bud.
Yes, sir.